Elias Crow had spent most of his life drifting through the frontier, a man chased by memories he could never outrun. He never stayed in one place long enough to build roots, but he never rode fast enough to escape the ghosts that followed him. For months now, he'd been crossing desolate land under merciless suns, searching for something he couldn't even name, something that might finally quiet the restlessness burning inside his chest. One afternoon, that restless search led him into a scene so haunting it nearly stopped his heart. At the edge of a rocky valley, an Apache settlement stood on the brink of collapse. Horses stood frozen in the heat, their ribs showing through dull hides, tongues hanging dry from thirst. Warriors who once carried pride in their posture now leaned forward weakly, their strength drained by the unforgiving land. Children huddled close to their mothers, their eyes hollow, their lips cracked with dust. Elias had seen suffering before, plenty of it, but this was different. This wasn't the chaos of a raid or the aftermath of a battle. This was silent desperation, clinging to the camp like a final prayer, refusing to die. As Elias rode closer, Apache scouts moved like lightning, surrounding him with drawn bows. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, a single wrong move away from igniting into violence. But before a single arrow could fly, a tall, stern man stepped forward and lifted his hand. Instantly, the scouts froze. This was Chief Coda. His hair was braided thick, with silver threading through the black. His back was straight as iron, and his eyes carried the weight of an entire people. He studied Elias quietly, his gaze piercing, before speaking with calm authority. Their river, he explained, had vanished weeks earlier after a sudden underground collapse. The closest remaining water lay beyond a canyon that few dared to enter, a twisted maze of stone, where even the most skilled trackers had vanished without a trace. Elias listened in silence, the chief's words hanging heavy in the hot, still air. When Coda finished, Elias told him the truth. Years ago, while chasing a band of raiders, he had crossed that very same canyon, and he remembered something, a narrow, hidden passage that led to a spring. Trusting a stranger was not in the Apache nature, but desperation has a way of bending every rule. After a long, tense moment, Coda nodded. He sent Elias into the canyon with two of his best scouts to confirm whether the spring still lived. The journey into the canyon was brutal. Jagged stone walls rose on both sides, like the jaws of some giant beast ready to crush them. The heat was merciless, radiating from the rocks. The horses stumbled often, their hooves slipping on the loose scree. But Elias recognized signs he had memorized long ago, a split boulder shaped like a claw, a crooked juniper tree twisted as if struck by lightning, a particular ridge that swallowed sound and spat it back in strange echoes. Hours later they heard it. A whisper. Soft, shimmering, and unmistakable. Water. The spring was still alive. Clear, cool liquid flowed between the stones, as if the earth itself had guarded its last secret for those on the verge of death. Elias dropped to his knees, letting the cold water run through his fingers. In that single, grounding instant, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. A sense of purpose. One of the scouts raced back to the village with the news. Elias stayed behind, carefully marking the path so no one would get lost. When the Apache arrived hours later, carrying their elders, their children, their last sliver of hope, many fell to their knees and wept openly as they drank. The sound of their relief was more profound than any celebration. When they returned to camp, life slowly began to trickle back into the settlement. That evening, Chief Coda stood before Elias with an expression that was heavier than simple gratitude. According to an ancient tradition, Coda announced, when a stranger saves the tribe from ruin, the tribe must offer a gift that binds their destiny to his. Elias didn't understand the weight of those words not until the next morning. At dawn, he was summoned before the largest teepee. The entire tribe stood in a wide, silent circle. The air vibrated with anticipation. Then the flap of the teepee opened. 22 Apache women stepped forward. Each was dressed in ceremonial clothing, their faces painted with traditional markings. Each stood tall, calm, and dignified. There was no fear in their eyes, no shame, only a quiet, resolute strength. Elias's breath caught in his throat. Coda explained that this was the highest honor their tribe could offer. These women represented the strongest, most resilient bloodlines of their people. Elias was being asked to choose one not as property, not as a reward, but as a sacred life bond meant to tie his destiny to the future of the tribe. The ground seemed to shift beneath Elias's feet. He had expected thanks. Maybe some food, shelter for a few nights. Not this. The women waited silently. He could see flickers of different emotions in their eyes. Some showed worry, some curiosity, some a quiet acceptance of their duty. Elias tried to speak, to refuse, but Koda stopped him. He said that Elias must first understand the meaning of the choice he was being asked to make. That night, Elias didn't sleep. He sat by a dying fire as his thoughts wrestled with the impossible weight of destiny. He had lived his entire life avoiding responsibility, running from any kind of attachment. Now, responsibility stood before him in human form, multiplied by 22. At sunrise, Koda walked with Elias to a ridge overlooking the valley. There he explained the ancient law more clearly. The women were not being given away, he said. They were offering their bloodlines freely to a man whose actions had fundamentally altered the fate of their tribe. The pact had nothing to do with reward. It was about ensuring future survival, about creating a bond of protection and loyalty that could never be broken. When Elias returned to the camp, the eyes of the tribe followed him, but not with pressure, with patience. He approached the line of women slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. As he walked, one of them stepped half a pace forward. Her eyes were dark and as steady as stone. There was no arrogance in her movement, only courage. Her name was Neely. She didn't smile. She didn't bow. She simply met Elias's gaze and seemed to search his very soul. In that moment, Elias realized the truth. This wasn't about choosing a woman. It was about choosing whether he believed in belonging at all. He turned to the tribe, to the silent circle of faces watching him, and he spoke with brutal honesty. He admitted his failures, his fear of attachment, his deep-seated terror of failing those who might trust him. He said he would never, ever claim a woman as a possession, but if the tribe desired his loyalty, he would give them his life in protection. The circle grew silent. The tension returned, but this time it was different. Then Chief Koda stepped forward and did something that stunned everyone. He dismissed the ancient condition. Instead of Elias choosing a woman, Koda declared that the ceremony would be transformed. Elias would become a guardian alibound to the tribe as a protector and a brother, not through a forced union, but through honor that was freely given and freely accepted. Neely stepped forward once more. She took his wrist and tied a woven band of horsehair and beads around it. The tribe welcomed him then, not as an outsider, but as one of their own. Over the following days, Elias helped guide the tribe back and forth to the spring. He helped train the younger warriors, repaired saddles, and shared meals around their fires. He even learned how to laugh again, a sound he thought he'd lost forever. And as he stood beside Neely one evening, watching the firelight dance across the teepees, he finally understood. The tribe had never offered him 22 women. They had offered him a home. And in saving them from thirst, they had, in turn, saved him from himself. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more content like this. We'll see you in the next one.